You got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up.
Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Get out there, play hard, enjoy those games.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the marvelous youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. What's going on today, my friend?
Not too much. Nothing too different in my world. How about you?
I'm doing good, other than rushing around trying to get out of work so we can do our show, which is going to be a great one today. Just have to rib you a little bit, though. You actually talked on Canadian radio today about somebody that signed with the New England Patriots, didn't you?
I did. Who was that player? I don't remember who it was.
That might have been Cam Newton.
Oh,
and
okay.
If
yeah,
I remember, I'm getting old, so sometimes I forget things. But on another show that we do on WLDJ, I kind of remember this old guy talking about the AFC East and, like, sternly saying on the show, like, in a loud voice, because he got me all worked up, that Cam Newton would be wearing a New England Patriot jersey this year. I kind of recall that happened.
Yep.
Did it?
And I said, no, he's not. It doesn't make sense. The fit isn't right. He's going to have to wait until a starting quarterback gets hurt, and then he can find a job, somewhere that way. But obviously, as we found out, we're recording the show on Monday. What is it, June 30th? 29th.
June 29th.
Recording the show on the 29th on Monday. Last night, we found out that Cam Newton perfectly did exactly what Troy said he would and completely went against what I was thinking. So
yeah, I just had to rub it in. Just had to rub it in, youngster. But let's move on because we got a guest on the line, and I can't wait to talk to her. We have a special guest, and we're going to talk a little bit of racing on Go Big or Go Home, kind of off of our norm, and I like it. And Hannah, I hope I say your last name right. Hannah Grisham, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So we're going to welcome in Hannah. And Hannah, before we get started, though, I was going to be, if you noticed in the beginning, I like to throw nicknames out. And when I was doing some research, I noticed that you have two nicknames, the Closer and then Hannah Zilla. So I need to know, how did you get those nicknames as we start?
So Hannah Zilla was kind of a nickname that my parents gave to me as a child. I was a very energetic child and kind of got into a lot of trouble, and I just had a lot of energy. So my parents gave me this name, Hannah Zilla, and it kind of just stuck. And then the other one, the Closer, was actually given to me by an announcer at one of my races. And that one kind of came because for me, I would sometimes struggle in like qualifying or such, but in the main I would start to work my way up. So that's how that came about, and that one also just kind of stuck.
Those are pretty awesome nicknames in general, yeah. I just, like as a whole, if you take someone's name and then add Zilla to the end of it, it's already, you just know you're expecting something, ferocious. And then the Closer in any sport, I think, can be respected. So that's awesome. So first off, just how old are you now, and when did you start racing in general?
Yeah, so I'm 20 years old right now, and I started racing when I was 6 years old. I did go-karts for about 10 years, and then I now race spec Miatas, and I'm also starting to do some open-wheel type of racing.
Yeah, I saw that you were getting into open wheel, and if I read correctly, when you were doing go-karts, you were like a national champion or a champion at a couple points during that career, correct?
Yeah, when I was racing go-karts, I picked up 2 national championships in about 2015, I think.
Unbelievable. How old were you when you when you got your first championship?
My first national championship, I was 15, but just like a club championship, I was probably 12-ish.
Wow.
So she won, just for those listening, again, she was 15 when she won a national championship. Like, that's something that I think any fan wishes they could experience in their lifetime, is winning a national championship, let alone being 15 years old and doing so. So it's obviously impressive. Tell the listeners how, like you say, go-kart racing and winning a national championship, and for some people that's going to a amusement thing where there's mini golf and go-kart racing. And just tell me how you found that. Did someone come to you with that? Were you so in love with racing that you were looking for any way you could get involved competitively, and go-kart racing was what it could be? Just tell the listeners on how that works exactly.
Yeah, so how I got started is my family is pretty split on sports. My mom and my sister rode horses, and I, on the other hand, my dad grew up racing motorcycles. So when I was born, I kind of rode horses a little bit, and it wasn't my thing. It was not my thing, too slow. So my dad had a friend who his kid was racing go-karts, so he kind of heard about that. So my dad took me to the indoor go-kart tracks a few times just to see if I kind of liked it, even though it is pretty different than an indoor go-karting track. And I enjoyed it a lot, so for my 6th birthday, he bought me a little go-kart, and that was it.
So 6 years old, and now you're on your way up to the top. And I mean, I say that, and I want the listeners to know that you need to go. I believe your website, Hannah, the one that you have a couple of them, but Hannah Grisham, is it .com? Is that like your racing page? Let the listeners know what your
racing. It's HannahGrishamRacing.com.
I went there, and I'm being totally honest with this. When I started looking into everything that you were doing, and I'm like a half hour with you today, I think Kevin and I could probably spend 3 hours, because the things that you have accomplished at 20 years old, people dream of doing in a lifetime. And I'm saying that in all sincerity. You have done so much being 20 years old. And I'll tell the listeners in a little bit, and you can add how you want. You're currently attending San Diego State University, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually at a JC right now, but I still do technically go to San Diego State, and I probably will be back there in the next semester or two.
So you're attending college, you're racing cars,
yeah.
And the thing that I want to get to, and I'll get to this later, youngster, you are involved with 3 nonprofit organizations, correct?
Yes.
And so the one that I really want to talk about is Athena Racing, getting young women involved in STEM programs and relating it to racing. I thought that was unique. I was stuck on that page for about 20 minutes just looking through it. That's awesome that you're doing those things. My question to you, and then I'll turn it over to the youngster when you're done, but it's one question that, we have to throw it out there, and I'm sure you've been asked many times. You are a woman in a male-dominating sport. When you go out on the racetrack and you're looking at everything that you put into it, what is the biggest barrier for you? Because you've been very successful. But how do you handle that part of it, being a woman in what is predominantly a male-dominated sport?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I always kind of wondered why I was the only girl in this field of 30 other little boys. It was definitely a different experience. But I think the biggest difference is that female in this sport, you have to prove yourself a little bit more than a male would, just because, people have assumptions about females in motorsports.
Should I jump in there, youngster? I just want to follow up real quick. So you say you got to prove yourself, and I think your nickname alone would prove that. I mean, the guys got to be a little afraid of that when they see Hannah Zilla on the racetrack. But when you're out there and you say prove yourself, I mean, how satisfying is it to you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be winning a race, but how does it make you feel when you are out there and you're racing and you go across the finish line, you ran a great race? And I know in racing, I have some long paths to racing connections with my father. But you can run a really good race, and you may not win that day just because somebody had a better car, but you yourself may have ran a really good race. And you get done, and you finish, and then you look behind you, and you see all these other guys behind you that you just beat. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel good. I think that's one of my favorite things is that because I think in any sport or any situation, you can kind of tell when a person is underestimating you, and that I don't know, that feeling of like being underestimated like just makes me want to beat that person just that much more, and it really is the sweetest feeling when I prove them wrong.
Yeah, I can understand that. From a practicing standpoint, how, I guess more so growing up, but in general, how do you practice? I guess just tell the listeners about your practicing regimen, no matter whether it's ahead of a go-kart race, open, just anything in terms of practice. How do you get that in? Because I think some people may not understand exactly how you truly practice when it comes to competitive racing.
Yeah, so usually how it works is a lot of times, like throughout my go-karting and now, is that practice will usually be like the day before a race weekend. So usually at our races, we'll race Saturday and Sunday, and you'll have like one like short like 10-15 minute practice in the morning before your races and such. But usually if you're going to practice, it's the day before the race, so that Friday. Other than that, it is difficult to like practice just in other situations. Racing is a pretty expensive sport, so that definitely makes it difficult.
And it's like, I'll tell you what, youngster, she's like leading right into my questions, because that was my next question with the financial part of racing and being so young, and your mom and dad, pushing you, well, not pushing you along the way, but you kind of being in the forefront and them supporting you. When you get to this stage in your career and you're looking at the time to practice, because people need to realize, for those out there that are not racing fans, every time you start that car, the gas for race crew, not cheap. Tires, not cheap. So when you practice, you're running tires, you're running gasoline. That takes a lot of money. A lot of times, too, where you're at, you probably have to rent tracks or do things of those nature. Plus, then, you have engine repair. How do you make it work as somebody that's up and coming, that doesn't have like this huge backing? And I know you're probably looking for sponsors, and I saw you had a few, but how do you go about that financial part of it? I would imagine early on, mom and dad probably pouring up a lot of that money.
Yeah, it's definitely very difficult, because I think racing is probably one of the most expensive sports, if not the most expensive. And that's kind of one of the sadder things about racing, is that a lot of kids who are able to do these types of racing that are really expensive, is it's really just that their parents have a lot of money and are able to support them. So a lot of kids who maybe don't have that type of support don't really get the chance, because it is really difficult to get sponsors, because in racing, it's not like we get this money and then we kind of keep it for ourselves and a little bit goes to the sport. It's the money we get all goes to the sport. So it is very difficult to get funding. And like you said, yeah, I do look for sponsors. I am thankful that since I was a little kid, my parents have helped support me. But now I'm kind of at that stage in my racing where I have to start doing that stuff myself, because I am 20 years old and I can't really just depend on my parents as much.
So you heard it there, fans. You heard it from Hannah Zilla, and I'm going to keep using that nickname. I love that nickname. I really do. So Hannah Zilla is telling you, if you are a racing fan, you need to go to her website. She'll give you all of her contact information. It'll be on our post when we replay the show. You need to go sponsor this young lady and help her accomplish her dream, because we haven't even got to the one thing that I want to talk about, and that's the open wheel that you want to get into. But youngster, I'll turn it back over to you.
I'll go with a more smaller scale question. For you, what is it? It can just clearly be winning, but what is the best? Kind of a two-part question. is the best part of racing and going through that career, is it simply winning? And then for you, like you said, I mean, you've been racing since 6, and I'm assuming, it's almost constantly on your mind, and it's what you have done hundreds of times competitively. Does it ever tire you out? Has there ever been a burnout stage where you needed to take a break? I know for some athletes, they have had to take a break. For some athletes, it's all one sport all the time, all, basically 365 days a year, and that's just what they do until they're hopefully professionals and then eventually retire. What has been the journey for you? And again, just what's the best part of racing?
Yeah, so I think the first question, personally for me, it's not just about winning. I mean, obviously winning is great, and that's like really the cherry on top. But I think it's a lot more than just that. I think racing has brought me so many people that I've met in the industry who have become like family to me, and that is really amazing. And also, I think racing for me is almost therapeutic in a way. It's hard to explain, but when I'm in the car and I'm driving, I get in like this zone where it's like my body just knows what to do. It's become so natural to me over these years. And the adrenaline rush and the competition, I think those are some of my favorite parts of racing. The second question you asked, which was about the burnout, I think everyone in every sport kind of has those moments of burnout where they get really frustrated or kind of tired and almost hopeless in a way. And yeah, I would say that I've definitely experienced moments like that, but nothing where I've been like, I'm like, this is it, I'm going to quit. I definitely have those days where I wake up and I'm like, this is a tough sport. Like, do I really want to pursue this? But at the end of the day, it's what I love to do, and I'm going to try as hard as I can to make it happen.
So I'm going to go again to another championship, because not only were you a kart champion, you also ran in the Miata series, and you were a champion there also, correct? Tell the listeners a little bit about that series that you were running when you were in that national championship.
So I currently race Spec Miata, and last year I won our region's championship. And Spec Miata is really great because it's a less inexpensive form of racing, but it's really, really good racing. We usually get like upwards of 30, 40 cars in our field, so that's really awesome. It's super competitive. But yeah, last year I won the championship, and I also won the Teen Mazda Championship, which is something that Mazda does for all the teenagers. And so, yeah.
I guess for your parents, have they, I suppose it's something they've always supported you behind. Is that right?
Yeah, they've been really supportive.
How much do you think that helps just anyone, any athlete pursuing any sort of dream athletically whatsoever, to have people that you always know have your back? And like you said, I mean, along the way you meet other drivers, other people who, support you, cheer for you, become your friends, obviously. But just having a backbone of people you can rely on, just how much does it mean to you to have people that you can rely on at the end of the day, no matter what you decide to do?
Yeah, it's really, really helpful, and I think it is in any sport. It's really helpful to have those people you can always count on that are going to be there after a bad weekend or a bad day. And especially in this sport, like without their support, I would probably have stopped racing years and years ago, just, for multiple reasons. But yeah, it's really great to have support like that.
So Hannah, you are now, and what I was reading is your next venture where you want to go in your career is the W Series. Is that correct? It's open wheel racing, and I was reading that you were dabbling with that, and that's something that you really want to pursue. So again, fill the listeners in on what W Series is and a little bit more. I think a lot of people think of racing and they think of NASCAR and they think of those model cars. Open wheel racing a little bit different. So just give the fans a little idea of what the W Series is.
Yeah, so the W Series is a all-female Formula 3 series, which races in Europe and some stuff over here in America and Mexico. So I went and tried out for it last year, but I didn't make it because I didn't have enough open wheel experience, which is kind of my reason behind trying to get more open wheel experience this year. But it's a really awesome program. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Just trying to fill the fans in on what the difference is between an open wheel race and what people consider like a stock car race. Because a lot of times, a lot of local tracks, they may not see a lot of open wheel racing here in America.
Okay, yeah. So the difference between open wheel racing and even the sports car racing that I do compared to things like NASCAR is that NASCAR really only goes in circles. We go left and right. So it's definitely different. I would say for me it's more exciting and more challenging, but it is very different, and that is the thing is that typically most Americans really only know NASCAR, but in like Europe and such, open wheel racing and racing it's huge there. So yeah, I would say that's the main difference. And also open wheel, another big difference is that they have a lot of downforce, a lot of aero on the cars, so that makes it much different as well.
Which makes the speed faster, am I correct? Like open wheel racing, the speed of the cars is going to be a lot faster.
Yes, that's true. Downforce makes it much faster through the turns, pretty much everywhere.
What is the difference? And youngster, I'm going to jump in. I apologize. Hannah, just so you know, I interrupt the youngster all the time, and I feel it's my right because I'm a lot older than him. So I can interrupt them all I want. I had a chance to live in Indianapolis for a year, and I had a chance with our company to do a Indy 500 day before where we got to walk around the garage and we got to walk around the cars. So when you look, your comfortability, when you go in open wheel race compared to traditional racing, what is the difference? And I just try to we always like to relate things to the people. As a race car driver, making that transition from, traditional racing to open wheel, what is the difference for you as a driver behind the wheel?
Yeah, there's definitely a different style of driving when you're switching from more of like a sports car type of racing to open wheel. So I would say the main difference, because of all the aero and the downforce, is for me it was the braking. So if you're in a sports car, let's say, you're trying to carry as much momentum as possible to turn. So you're very soft and pretty light on the brakes and not trying to have a really hard, sharp brake. It's very smooth, but in an open wheel car, it's completely different. Since you have all this downforce, you then have to brake very, very hard and then bleed off the brakes, because that's with the downforce, that's how it is the fastest around the corner. So for me, that was probably the hardest part and the biggest change. Other than that, the basics still apply when you're switching from back and forth.
Unfortunately, I have to bring up the coronavirus and everything that's gone on. How much has that impacted racing? Obviously, nowadays, over the last, however many days, again, in the U.S., like we've mentioned before, we're familiar with NASCAR, and we've seen, you can watch a NASCAR race go on today. But how much has it impacted the racing world? How much has it impacted you from a practicing, competing standpoint? And also just in general, if the world is 100% normal, how much racing would you say that you watch on a random, during a random week, say a year ago?
Yeah, so coronavirus has affected the whole racing industry pretty greatly, I would say. Usually in motorsports, the season starts around February and will end anywhere around like October, September, November-ish. So our season got delayed by a couple months, which meant that a lot of races had to get canceled. They're just starting to have some of the races start happening, but not all series are going to be able to make up those races. So for me, I think I missed about 3 of our race weekends or so. So it did greatly affect the amount of time I'll get to race this year. And then, sorry, well, hold on, I'm trying to think of the other question. What did you ask? I'm sorry, the other part.
No, you're fine. Just how much racing, say, a year ago when the world was quote-unquote normal?
Oh, how much I watched?
Yeah.
Okay. And then usually I would say that my favorite type of racing to watch is F1. I love watching F1. So for me, that has also been canceled and delayed, but they actually have their first race coming back this weekend, even though it is without fans. So I'm really, really excited because I've missed watching F1. So I'm so excited for it this weekend.
Well, I bet you're kind of mad, too, you can't be mad at a global pandemic. I mean, we have no control over that. But the way that you finished last year, if I was looking at it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2019, you had like 7 wins and you only raced like 12 races. Is that correct? Something like that? It was it was unbelievable, correct, the number of wins compared to how many races you had. So you were like probably on this high coming into 2020, and then all of a sudden we get a global pandemic and you got to kind of scale back on your racing. I mean, how did that kind of affect your mentality? Because you finished 2019 just amazing with the number of wins you had.
Yeah, I was definitely it was not great for me. I was definitely really excited, like you said, coming in from 2019. I was excited for stuff that I had planned for 2020 and what this year was going to bring, but it kind of ruined a lot of plans that I had. And in racing, like a lot of sports that are played professionally, you only really have so much time to make it happen, and you can't really play when you're super old, So for me, it's like it almost feels like this year has kind of partially been wasted. I mean, there's still time to like make stuff up and make stuff happen, but those few months definitely hurt.
What are your ultimate goals, dreams from a racing perspective, and what do you hope to do?
I think for me, I don't really have a specific goal, whether it be sports car or like open wheel, like IndyCar. But for me, I just want to make a living doing what I love. That would be my ultimate goal.
So that means sponsors, people listening in. Anatola needs sponsors.
There you go.
Race. But I say that, and that's what race car drive. We watch NASCAR. We watch the guys that are out there every weekend, and you look at the cars, and they're filled with sponsors. And we hear about drivers that can't drive because they lost a sponsor. And ultimately in racing, it is sponsorship. And for those listening in, it may sound like we're joking, but I'm gonna throw this out. We brought Hannah on the show for a couple of reasons. One, women in racing, trying to promote that. The second thing, after I looked at and researched some things, Hannah, I want you to share your involvement with the community and all the nonprofit stuff that you do. I told you I got stuck on Athena Racing webpage probably for 20 minutes. It is getting girls involved in automotive things. You're also in, I believe, City of Hope. And then the other one, Shift Up Now, I believe, is the other one that you're in. But you do a lot. Not only do you want to pursue racing as a career and do that as a living, you already, at 20 years old, are giving so much back using the sport of racing to do it, which to me makes you an ultimate person to be able to sponsor, because not only do you want to do it on the racetrack, you're doing a lot of things off of the track to help the community. So just share with the listeners some of the things that you're involved in.
First one, like you said, is City of Hope, which is a cancer treatment and research center, which is located really close to where I live. And we have been working with them for a couple of years now. And last year at our race in Fontana, which is really close to City of Hope, we set up a big easy up and with a bunch of information and such, and ended up donating a couple $100. But this year we had really big plans, which I'm sad about because it didn't get to happen, where we were actually going to be a part of their really big gala that happens, and we're actually going to auction off a ride along with me in my car. So I was really excited about that and sad that it didn't get to happen because of everything. But maybe next year that'll get to happen. And then another one that I work with is Athena Racing, which is the one that you said that you were really you really liked. And that I became involved in about a year ago. And what it is it's a program for girls in high school who are interested in pursuing a career in STEM-related subjects. And they do a lot of this through motorsports, so they get to, like, kind of learn how cars work. They get to, like, tear down a car and put it all back together. So it's a really cool program, and they're located in San Diego. And then the last one is Shift Up Now, which is an all-female group of women who race all over the country. So it's a cool collective to have and to be able to connect to those people who, you know, are going through similar situations and such.
How cool is it for you to, obviously in general, it's awesome that you do all of these things outside of just compete and win. But how cool is it for you to kind of not look down upon, but look at younger female drivers and be able to talk to them, aid them in any way that is possible, and somewhat be seen, not idolized, but seen as, I guess, more of an older sister, wiser sister to be looked at? How cool is it to kind of be a mentor figure for some, and help out in general, nonprofit community stuff? Just how awesome is that, given your stage and, you know, what that's been able to do for you?
Yeah, I think it's really awesome to be able to, you know, give back or even inspire younger girls. Like I said earlier, like, I remember when I first started racing, and throughout most of my racing, there really are not that many girls that I've raced against, just because there aren't that many women in motorsports. So I think if I was younger and I had someone to kind of look up to and talk to who was also a female, I think that would have been so helpful and so awesome. So to me, if I'm able to help a younger girl that's into racing, or even maybe inspire one to get into racing, I think that would be so cool.
Well, Hannah, you've done a lot of great things so far at 20 years old, and I'm really glad that you reached out to me on LinkedIn. I'm glad that we could have you on the show. I definitely want to bring you back and talk more racing. I think that, you know, what you're doing is awesome. I got one last question, youngster, and then you can finish it up. But it's actually going to be a kind of a funny thing. I saw on your Facebook that you were holding, like, this gigantic fish. So I need to know, did you really catch that big fish that I saw on Facebook? You were, like, holding it up, and it was, like, almost as big as you were.
Yeah, that was actually in Baja. Me and my family went for Christmas, and we were in Agua Verde, and me and my sister were standing on the shore, and there was this big school of fish that came in, and we just threw our poles out and caught those fish. So yeah, that was super awesome.
That thing was huge.
It was pretty
tremendous. Big. It really is almost as big as you are. So before I turn it back over to the youngster, I do want, Hannah, for you to let the listeners know all of the places that they can find you on social media. And for everybody listening in, make sure you go follow Hannah. Like I said, not only her racing, but everything she does off the field is just tremendous. And at 20 years old, I said it before, she's done more in her lifetime than a lot of people accomplish their whole life, career-wise, and things they do for the community. So, Hannah, let the listeners know where they can find your stuff. And then, youngster, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Hannah G Racing, and Facebook and LinkedIn at Hannah Grisham, and on Instagram at Hannah Grisham Racing.
Awesome. So, again, follow her on all social media platforms. So, Hannah, I guess the last thing to leave you with, just give fans, give anyone looking to get into racing, give all of our listeners just anything you want to close out your time with, whether it's something you've gone through and you've been able to succeed through, or just any sort of general message to any racing fans out there or anyone looking to get into racing.
I would say, especially if you're a female, don't let the fact that you might be the only female out there scare you. Just get involved, whatever it be. Go out there and be a part of the racing. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Hannah, for joining us today. We'll be in touch.
Thank you for having me.
Youngster, that was a great interview.
It was. It was fun. That was the first, I think it's the first racing interview we've had on the show. We've done a number of different interviews, but I think that's the first racing-focused interview we've had on the show.
That is truly the first racing interview that we've had. And like I said,
awesome.
Hannah reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, woman in racing. I'll go check this out. So I went to her webpage, and I'm like, holy cow. Like, and she talked about her championships. Like you had mentioned it, 15 years old, winning a championship. I don't care what you're doing at 15 years old to win a championship. That's awesome. Then she turns around and goes into another series, wins another championship. And then I was real impressed, like I said, Youngster, when I saw the things she does off the track. Like, that is a model athlete that you want your daughter to look up to. So I'm like, we need to get her on the show. So I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, for sure. Like you said, if we can...
You still there, Hannah?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, still hanging in. You listen to all the good things I'm saying about you.
Of course. How
all
could
right.
I not?
Well, since you're still on the show, we'll keep you on the show. I'll ask you another question. Besides racing, what other sports do you follow?
Well, I played water polo and I swam in high school, so I somewhat follow water polo a little bit. I very lightly follow just football and stuff, but not too much. Racing is the main thing I follow.
Yep. Well, we kind of figured all your racing background. That's another interview, Youngster. We never had a water polo interview on our show.
Before you called in during the pregame, Troy, we were talking about water polo a little bit, and water polo is really fun. It's more fun to watch than baseball. That's not even a question. And baseball obviously has a bigger following than water polo. But my dad coached swimming, diving, water polo for a number of years, and just seeing a practice is cool, but a a game for water polo or seeing a tournament over a couple days, water polo is fun. I mean, it's somewhat of a combination of a number of sports, but that's a hard sport to compete in and practice for, and to actually have enough endurance to compete in water polo. It's intense and it's fun and it's high paced, and I'm surprised it's not more mainstream, I guess, so to say. Not necessarily competing with the NFL or NBA, but I'm surprised it doesn't get more following. I think most people know more about swimming than they do water polo, and I think water polo's got a lot more action to follow as a fan on a television screen than
I love
swimming.
watching water polo when the Olympics are on. And that's
right.
really,
yeah.
You don't find it. The only other time you find water polo on is when you see the NCAA championships on ESPN. So there's no coverage of it. None whatsoever. And I will tell you this, those guys are in great shape. And Youngster, when I went to our great university of the University of Wisconsin Whitewater, the soccer team shared the locker room with the swim team because our locker room was right off of the pool. Those swimmers, honestly, I thought we were in great shape as soccer players. Swimmers could probably have went out and run with us and probably made us put us to shame. Swimmers are in great shape. They have to be. So, like I said, I enjoy watching water polo. I'll watch it when it's on. I don't turn it off. I mean, and usually, where you live, Hannah, out in California, water polo is really big.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty big here.
So, Youngster, we do have, this is our College Big Ten show, and there's actually some breaking 10 college news. And like I said, jokingly, I'm going to get real excited for the next 10 minutes as you talk about a 2022 commitment.
Yes. 2022, not too far off in the distance, Troy. But it is.
You know how much I love verbal commitments. You know how much I love them.
I know. For one thing, you can go back on that, obviously. That can happen over the course of a couple hours, let alone, talking years in advance. But some people, some players, some athletes do decide to stick with that commitment. Not that it's set in stone yet, but Michigan State basketball has landed the number one, according to a number of different recruiting sites, the number one basketball recruit, a 5-star small forward, Amani Bates. He has committed to Michigan State, verbal commitment again. So that's Michigan State. Usually I think that this is not, it's weird when the number one recruit, I guess, signs with a Big Ten school. He
didn't sign,
basketball.
youngster. He said he wanted to play there.
You're right. Commit to a Big Ten school. But we always, I think it's an odd year when Michigan State doesn't pick up a top 15 overall recruit.
It's cool for our show because we're a Big Ten show.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, I mean, okay, so this kid said he wants to play for Izzo and he wants to play at Michigan State. He doesn't graduate for 2 more years. And I know he's a good player.
I'll say this, Troy. He could reclassify to 2021. So just throwing that out there. Not this coming basketball season, but the following one. I hear you, though. He's, probably a couple years away.
We see it every year, youngster. We see these kids, and we see they decommit, and then we see this, and then they sign there. I mean, again, that's why, for the fans that listen in all the time, I was very sarcastic when I said I was going to get real excited about this. But it is news. We don't have much other Big Ten news to talk about other than, basketball commits. And football, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on right now. But, the thing is, youngster, when you look at basketball and these young guys that are committing, I just look at it from the standpoint that, okay, that they're going to say they want to play somewhere, but if this kid gets really, really good and he's going to be a one and done, is that where he wants to go, Michigan State, in two years? Let's say Tom Izzo leaves next year. Is he still going to want to go to? There's so much that can happen in 2 years. That's why I take these verbal commitments with a grain of salt. I would say, what do you think, youngster? More than half of them, maybe 75% of them, actually work out. Like, not all of them decommit. It's just a handful that do, but those are the ones that make the news. And especially when you're a big 5-star recruit, of course, all the microscopes are looking at you. But I also look at it from this standpoint. And this is more of the corruptness of the NCAA. I mean, we're going down that road, young, so we talk about it all the time. This is the first year. The coronavirus actually did something good for sport, and it kept the NCAA away from corruptness. Because this is the first year doing this show after many years that we didn't have to talk about a scandal. So they did do one good thing. But to this, my point, Kevin, is this kid, how old is he? 16? Maybe 17?
Right, maybe.
I mean, think about it. Hannah, think about it, too. You're 20, and the things you've done, you're very mature for 20. Or think back when you were 15. Are you thinking clearly? I mean, I wasn't. This guy right now, part of me is like, okay, he's going to say he's going to Michigan State because he wants to kind of poke the fire, and he wants Kentucky, and he wants Duke, and he wants all these other guys to try and make the play about it. Because you always want something you can't have. That's the way the world is. So he goes out, he commits to Michigan State. Now Duke's like, oh, let's make one last push. It's a verbal commitment. This kid is going to get surrounded now by other schools. They know he committed verbally, but a verbal commitment means crap. It means nothing except for these other schools to sharpen up their teeth and go after him. So, I mean, it happens all the time. Again, I just looked at it, youngster, as, okay, what is it? It's 2022. I really don't care.
Yeah. It's something where you see the headline and you say, okay, cool. Especially if you're a Michigan State fan. If you're someone who's interested in the Big Ten as a whole, it's like, oh, wow, number one recruit might be coming to a Big Ten school. That's awesome. So,
no, it'd be cool for the conference, a good player like that.
Right. Yeah. So,
what other news we got, youngster? What other stuff we got on the Big Show?
Very interesting to me. So a few weeks ago, we talked about how was it last week or it was last week or 2 weeks ago? We talked about Chris Doyle, the strength and conditioning coach at Iowa. He was let go.
Youngster, sometimes I think you're old like me, forgetting things like that. We just talked about it last week.
I don't remember. See, on the Big Ten show, I don't know why, but the Big Ten show, I forget. Like, was it 1 week ago?
It's not like you record 5 different shows a week.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is not to say this isn't our most important show, but we do other shows every week. So
I got to give you some, youngster.
I know. But anyway, so again, Chris Doyle no longer at Iowa. Some racial things came out from numerous football players at Iowa. So he was let go of his duties. There was no real fight there. Whether he would have won that fight if he thought he could have won whatever.
Wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. So
not amidst everything going on in the country.
Yeah, exactly. Akrum Wadley, running back at Iowa from a couple years ago. What was it? Was it Twitter? Whatever it was. He came out, Facebook post. He had talked about supposedly a number of different negative experiences with the Iowa program, and it wasn't all Chris Doyle. He accused both Kirk Ferentz, who obviously we all know, Big Ten fans know, the head coach at Iowa, and Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator at Iowa, of unfair treatment to him. Let's see here, just very quickly. I'm reading off SaturdayTradition.com. That's a place that pays me to write. So I commonly go there for Big Ten news. So anyway, according to SaturdayTradition.com, Wadley remembered first, alleges that Kirk Ferentz had his meal card cut off, forcing him to call his mom to order pizza or eat with a fan. Obviously not ideal, not right. And Brian Ferentz, he supposedly, according to the Post, remembered Brian Ferentz asking if he was going to rob a liquor store or a bank after he put on a face mask during a cold practice one day. So very interesting in the fact that, and I don't know if this propels other players to maybe come out and say, yeah, Kirk Ferentz did this. Yeah, Brian Ferentz did that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's the start of something. I don't know. But it's interesting because it's not all involving one person anymore at Iowa, a strength and conditioning coach. Okay, he's been let go. Okay, good to move on. Maybe not necessarily. So it's interesting. Could it all be ridiculous nonsense and none of it is true? Maybe. Or maybe there's other players who have gone through the Iowa football program and there's been issues with Kirk Ferentz, been issues with Brian Ferentz, and it's been a racial thing. I don't know. But maybe we'll find out in the days, weeks to come. So it's just something to note as being interesting.
Youngster, have you ever been around a fire when the flame goes out and the red hot coals are on the bottom?
Yeah.
So there's still fire there, and sometimes smoke come out. So there's a little smoke in the Iowa program. And I mentioned this last week, that as a coach, and I go back to my personal experience coaching college soccer, I was in charge of that program. I knew everything that went on in that program. But I also gave parents a pass last week because sometimes you can't control what your coaches say or what they're doing in a weight room. And I said I would give him a pass if he did not know about that activity. I will not give him a pass if he knew of that activity and condoned it and did not discipline it. So as these things come out, again, if you're saying that Kirk Ferentz did it and he knew about it, then oh my, youngster, I am going to be on the not liking Kirk Ferentz bandwagon. You cannot let those things go on in a program.
Yeah.
But, like I said, sometimes in a program, when you have, especially in college football, you have, 100 players, you have 30-some-odd coaches, and me, in a soccer program, I'm in charge of men and women, 70 people, but I knew what was going on, and I expected to know what was going on. And that's where I come down on this one. I'm not going to sit and chastise Kirk Ferentz right now. If it comes out that he knew what was going on, a.k.a. Rick Pitino, a.k.a. Joe Paterno, those very high scandalous NCAA things that went on, then I will immediately jump off the bandwagon. But from my prior experience, youngster, things that happen in your program, you should know about them. But the things that have come up in this situation, when you're talking about racial slurs and treatment, unless these players went to the coach, and you would hope that they could, and you hope that they would feel comfortable going to the coach, I have to sit here and say, okay, maybe Ferentz didn't know. Again, I'm not defending him, because you should know what's going on in your program. But again, players were being treated this way, and they didn't do anything about it at the time as far as going to Kirk Ferentz. At that point, I have to say, okay, well, then Ferentz did not know. But if he knew one inkling about this, I immediately jump off the bandwagon, if that makes any sense to you, youngster.
Oh, yeah. And in short, I mean, if he's involved directly, then, then he clearly is in knowledge of what's going on. So I'll be interested to see if anything more comes of it. So.
Well, there's apparently some smoke going on there, and I would imagine if more players are coming out, we know why the resignation, or it was a separation agreement. I better get my facts straight. Separation agreement. There was a separation agreement because Iowa was probably ready to do an investigation. The guy knew he was guilty. Now, I mean, so here you go, youngster. You opened up the can of worms. You're going to get me all going again. I could talk about this for an hour just based on my coaching experience. So a separation agreement comes out. And this is where I have that black line and gray line with Kirk Ferentz. It's not just black and white. There's a gray area in the middle. Did Ferentz have anything to do with the separation agreement and the fact that you have to sign this and get out? Because I don't want an investigation, because if there's an investigation, it's going to come back on me. That's the bad me talking about Kirk Ferentz. Because that very well could have happened. Like, sign this because I don't want an investigation into my program. Because there could be some of that going on. It's unbelievable, youngster, as we go through this. But I would imagine now that more players are coming out, there's going to be an investigation, and there's going to be more players and coaches interviewed. And I don't think this is the last we hear about Iowa football. What else we got on the show today?
No, I agree with you there. I guess last thing, just a general thing. There was a site that came out with top 25, and I know this is right up your wheelhouse, Troy, but top 25 most difficult schedules in college football, assuming the college
2022 recruits, top 25 list.
I know. But just funny note, I don't know if you can call it funny, but number one hardest schedule for college football this upcoming season, again, if everything stays completely as it is, rated by this site: Purdue number 1, Michigan 3, Nebraska 4, Iowa 6, Michigan State 7. You get the point. 10 of the top 19 schools were from the Big Ten.
Take out the cupcake schools of all the schools in between the Big Ten schools. And granted, I know the Big Ten school, they play cupcake too, but the Big Ten schedule is tough. And if you take the cupcakes out of all the schedules, I guarantee you have almost every Big Ten team in the top 50.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe in the top 20.
Maybe.
Top 20 would be pushing it.
It would. But, 10 of the top 19. And I looked at Purdue's schedule. Like, they play Memphis, Air Force, Boston College. There's no juggernauts there, but they're all quality football programs. And that's what the Big Ten, not every program, but that's what Big Ten schools tend to do. If you're Michigan State, you might play an Eastern Michigan. If you're Michigan, you might play a Central Michigan. If you're, you get the point. You have some cupcakes in there. But then there's occasionally...
Yeah, and then you start playing in the conference, and you're playing Penn State, you're playing Michigan, you're playing Michigan State, you're playing Wisconsin, you're playing Iowa. I mean, go right down the list.
No, yeah.
How many bowl teams last? Not that bowls are, there's ultimate 800 million college bowl games, but how many teams did the Big Ten send to bowls last year? 10?
I'm Googling it. Let's see here.
9 or 10?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, yeah, 9. if 9 of your 14 teams are, playing good enough football to have a bowl want you. And again, there's seemingly thousands of bowl games, but not every team makes a bowl game. You have to finish at least 500, usually. So it doesn't mean your team's great if you finish 6-6, but you have to be a quality program to make a bowl game. And that's what
honestly, in the Big Ten, youngster, if you can finish 500 in that conference, that's a good year. I mean, you look at everybody's got to play.
Right. Yeah. But so, my final point with this, and then we can wrap up the show. I mean, again, Purdue's schedule, you play Memphis, Air Force, Boston College, and then you get, what the Big Ten schedule gives you. They don't even play Ohio State or Penn State. In my opinion, I could find a harder schedule, but they don't even play Ohio State, Penn State. And they have the number 1 rated hardest schedule. So I find that interesting. But again,
it should be based off winning percentage of your opponents, right?
Right. So again, if you're playing 3 decent programs in the non-conference, they don't have to be good, but they're decent. That elevates it, instead of playing Southeast Louisiana Tech, who finishes.
Yeah, and that number can be very misleading because even a cupcake game to you and I, when we're talking about the Big Ten, they could play a cupcake, but like an Appalachian State who finishes the year at 9-3, but they go to Michigan. Well, I shouldn't say that because Michigan fans probably don't want to hear me mention that.
No, you can.
My point. Yeah. So they supposedly should beat them 72-0, and that might be a big loss for I'll say this: a smaller school. I won't say schools. A smaller school goes and plays Ohio State and gets walloped 82-3. That's fine. They got their big payday. Now they go back and they play their regular schedule and they go 9-3. But one of the 3 losses was to Ohio State early in the season.
Right.
But now next year, that same team will play Purdue and it'll look like they're 9-3, even though Purdue's a better team than them. So that percentage can be very misleading to people, youngster, when you're talking about those winning percentages on your schedule.
It can. There's also teams like Boston College. I know recently they haven't been good, and I think 5 years ago to 10 years ago they would put up 8-4, 9-3 numbers, be hovering around the top 25. I remember them being better than what they have been the last few years. But so you get cases like that, or you get cases like, again, they play Memphis week 2, and Memphis last year made it to the Cotton Bowl, and they played Penn State. So, Memphis has their years. Boston College has their years. Air Force, at times, that's not a fun offense to play when they have the right guys in the system and you're playing a wishbone offense. That's annoying. Anytime Ohio State, I'm an Ohio State fan for those that don't know. And if you're still listening to the show, thank you, by the way. Because
why
I know
wouldn't they still be listening, youngster? It's only an hour.
Beyond me. But this is one of the longer shows we've had in a while due to what's been going on around the country. So just appreciating the fans, Troy. But follow us on Twitter at YoungsterOldMan, where you can find all of our shows, especially at thegruelingtruth.com. But so again, there are teams that have their years, and whenever Ohio State would play Navy on their schedule, it would be interesting to me because Navy, sometimes it would be a better Navy team, and you're playing the wishbone, and it's like, oh, it's the end of the third quarter, and Ohio State's up 24-17. Like, this is an actual football game. And they might go away and win it by 17, 21 points, but it was always interesting. It seems like you never absolutely obliterate Navy, Army, Air Force, no matter who you are.
That's because they control the ball.
Right. It keeps the game interesting.
And if they don't turn it over, it's going to be a couple-score game, even against a high-powered offense, because they don't let the other team's offense on the field.
Yeah. So.
All right, youngster, what else we got?
That's it. I'm done.
That's it.
No more.
Did you hang on the line till the end of the show? I didn't hear what you thought, youngster.
No, I didn't hear either. But in any case.
No, that was a good interview today. I hope you enjoyed the show today, everybody.
Yeah.
As we noted, you can go to the write-up and look at how to find out what Hannah's doing in her racing career. Like I said, a young lady that's done a lot on the track and off the track at 20 years old. I mean, I look at that stuff, youngster, and what she's doing right now. That makes my schedule look like a easy one.
Right. Yeah.
But
beyond,
we'll wrap it up. Yeah, we'll wrap this up, folks. Make sure that you find us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man, and that is where all of the links for all of our shows are. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Hannah Grisham today and our recap of Big Ten sports. We'll get back at you next week, same place, same time. Have a good night, everyone.
You got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up.
Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Get out there, play hard, enjoy those games.